On my 18th birthday, they told me I was adopted from foster care. My stepfather demanded I leave and my adoptive mother called me an ungrateful. But I just smiled because they had no idea about the discovery I'd made in the closet 3 days before. It all started with a deep cleaning. My mother, I still call her mom out of habit even though I know the truth now, asked me to clear out the high shelves in the master bedroom closet. "Naomi, there is so much junk piled up over the years, and my back is killing me," she complained, rubbing her lower back. I agreed without any argument. At 17, I was a beautiful daughter who never talked back to her elders and always helped around the house. Climbing onto the step stool, I began taking down boxes and bags. Dust motes danced in the rays of the April sun slicing through the blinds. Most of the items were old clothes and magazines from the 80s and 90s. My mother, Brenda Jameson, could never part with the past, keeping every little thing as if it were a museum exhibit. In the farthest corner, behind a stack of yellowed ebony magazines, I felt a small cardboard box. It was tightly sealed with packing tape, and clearly hadn't been opened for many years. Written on it in blue pen were the words "Documents. Must keep." The handwriting didn't look like my mother's or my stepfather's, Walter Jameson. Curiosity took over. I carefully picked at the edge of the tape with my fingernail and opened the box. Inside were documents in clear plastic sleeves stacked neatly. On top was a birth certificate, my birth certificate. But when I took it in my hands, my breath caught. The box for "Mother" had a completely different name listed. Not Brenda Jameson, as I had believed my whole life, but Serena Caldwell. The birth date was the same, the place of birth too, St. Jude's Women's Center in our city of Memphis, Tennessee. But the mother was a completely different woman. My hands trembled as I reread the lines again and again. Maybe it's a mistake. Maybe someone else's document accidentally ended up in the box. But no, my name was there and my maiden surname before my parents changed it to Jameson. Naomi Caldwell. Under the certificate were more papers. A release form from the Shelby County Department of Child Services stating that the child, Naomi Caldwell, had been placed for adoption with the Jameson family. This was dated when I was just 9 months old. So I really was adopted. That meant Brenda and Walter Jameson were not my biological parents. I sank to the floor right in the middle of the scattered boxes and tried to process what was happening. How was this possible? Why had they never told me the truth? I had grown up completely convinced that they were my birth parents. We even had shared family photos from my infancy. My heart was pounding wildly. Fragments of memories spun in my head. Mom had always been somewhat distant, rarely hugging me, rarely saying affectionate words. Dad also kept his distance, though he was fair and never harmed me. But that genuine warmth, that unconditional love my friends talked about when describing their parents, I had never felt it. Now many things made sense. Why did I have brown eyes when they both had blue? Why was I tall and thin while they were short and a little heavy? Why did I have such a different character, dreamy and sensitive, while they were practical and hard-edged? Genetics doesn't lie. Besides the birth certificate and the release from DCS, there was one more piece of paper. A court order. The text was complex, legalistic, but I understood the gist. My mother, Serena Caldwell, had her parental rights terminated and I was placed in foster care for future placement. The order was dated when I was just 9 months old. That meant I lived with my real mother for nearly a year. I tried to remember anything from that time, but of course nothing remained in my memory. I was too young. Steps sounded downstairs. Mom was coming up the stairs. I quickly shoved the documents back into the box, sealed it with tape, and put it back in place behind the magazines. My heart was hammering so loudly I thought the whole house could hear it. "Naomi, how's it going? Is there a lot of junk up there?" Mom asked, looking into the room. "No, I'm almost done. Just a little bit left," I replied, trying to keep my voice sounding normal. She nodded and left. I stayed sitting on the floor among the dusty boxes, trying to figure out what to do next. The world I had known for 17 years had crumbled in 5 minutes. It turned out that my entire life was built on a lie. That the people I considered my parents had hidden the truth about my origins from me. But the question that troubled me most was, where is my real mother? What happened to her? Why were her parental rights terminated? And why did the Jamesons take me from a group home if they never really loved me? I finished cleaning the shelves mechanically as if in a dream. The rest of the day I walked around in a fog, answering my parents' questions in monosyllables, picking at my food during dinner. Luckily, they didn't notice my state or chose not to. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying the information I'd found in my head. Serena Caldwell, my mother. Where is she now? Is she alive? Does she remember me? Maybe she has been looking for me all these years. By morning I had made a decision. I would find my real mother. I would find out the truth about what happened 18 years ago. Only then would I understand what to do next with this lie I had lived my whole life. The next 2 days leading up to my birthday were spent in frantic searching. In the mornings when my parents went to work, I would sit at the computer and search the internet for hours for any information about Serena Caldwell. I started with social media on Facebook and Instagram. There were dozens of people with that name, but none fit the age. My mother should be around 41 years old now based on the documents. I scrolled through profiles one after the other, peering into the faces of unfamiliar women, trying to find some resemblance to myself. Then I tried search engines typing in different combinations. Serena Caldwell, Memphis, Tennessee. Serena Caldwell, 1984 birth year. Serena Caldwell, parental rights terminated. There were tons of results but nothing useful. On the second day of searching, I stumbled upon the archive of the local newspaper, the Memphis Ledger. You could find articles from past years there. I typed my mother's name into the archive search and froze. One mention came up. The article was dated the very year I was removed from the family. The headline read, "Neglect case opened in Midtown." I read further. A criminal case regarding the inadequate execution of parental duties towards a minor daughter has been opened against Serena Caldwell, born in 1984, residing at North Parkway Avenue, apartment B3. My heart beat faster. It was her. My age matched up. If Mom was 41 now, she was 22 when I was born. Young, probably inexperienced. What happened? The article was short, revealing no details, just the dry facts about the case being opened. The address. I had the address where my mother lived 18 years ago. North Parkway Avenue was in an older section of the city, not far from the old industrial zone. I knew the area well. I often went there with my friend Chloe to the shopping center. That evening, while my parents were watching television, I quietly slipped out of the house. I said I was going to Chloe's to study for exams. I took the bus to North Parkway Avenue. The building at number 23 was an aging brick walk-up apartment complex. The paint on the hallway doors was peeling. The windows of some apartments were boarded up with plywood. I went up to the second floor and found apartment B3. I stood by the door, gathering the courage to ring the bell. My chest tightened with anxiety. "What? No, everything is fine," I replied. "I'm just thinking about the future. Tomorrow I turn 18 and I'll be an adult." "Yes, time flies fast." Dad sighed. "It seems like yesterday you were just a baby and now you're a grown woman." "A baby?" I wondered if he remembered what I was like when they brought me home from the group home. I was only 1 year old then. I must have been tiny and scared. "Do you remember what I was like as a baby?" I asked cautiously. My parents exchanged glances. There was something strange in that look, a kind of guardedness. "Of course we remember," Mom quickly answered. "You were a very calm baby. Rarely cried, slept well. And do you have any photos from my earliest infancy?" "We do, of course. We'll show them tomorrow at your birthday party." "I prepared the album specially," Mom said, but I detected a hint of uncertainty in her voice. After dinner, I locked myself in my room again. Tomorrow I turn 18. Tomorrow I become an adult and gain all the rights of a grown person. But tomorrow, apparently, the Jamesons were planning to tell me the truth about my origins and ask me to move out because their obligations to raise an adopted child would formally end. I took an old-school notebook from the shelf and wrote on the first page, "Search for Serena Caldwell." Under the heading, I recorded everything I'd learned over the 2 days. The address where she lived, the information from the neighbors, the mention in the newspaper, and my father's name, Darius Caldwell. There wasn't much information, but it was a start. Tomorrow, after the conversation with the Jamesons, I would begin acting more aggressively. I would go to the archives, to child services, find people who might have known my mother. I would find her whether she was alive or not. I would know the truth about what happened 18 years ago, and then I would decide what to do next with my life. On the morning of April 18th, I woke up to the smell of fresh baking. Mom was making my favorite sweet potato pie, a tradition she followed every year on my birthday. It felt strange to realize that this woman who had cared for me, made breakfast, and baked pies for 17 years was actually a stranger to me. "Happy birthday, sweetie." Brenda Jameson hugged me when I came down to the kitchen. Her hug was warm, but I felt my entire body tense up. Now, knowing the truth, every word and gesture from her was perceived differently. Walter Jameson also wished me happy birthday, giving me a modest but pretty pair of gold earrings. "Now you are a grown woman. You can wear real jewelry," he said. And there was a certain sadness in his voice. We had breakfast together like a normal family. My parents talked about the plans for the day, a small gathering with relatives during the day, and a formal dinner just the three of us in the evening. I nodded, smiled, and played the role of the happy birthday girl. But inside, everything was clenching in anticipation of the conversation that was inevitably going to take place. After breakfast, Mom brought out the family photo album. "Want to see what you looked like when you were little?" I took the album with a racing heart. I wondered what age the photos start from. The first pictures were dated when I was 18 months old. I was sitting on Brenda Jameson's lap in some park looking serious with big eyes. In the next photos, my second birthday, my third, I grew up. But in all the pictures, I looked somewhat guarded, serious in a way that wasn't childlike. "Are there no earlier photos?" I asked. "Oh, we didn't have a good camera back then," Mom replied. "We only bought one later when you were a little older." A lie. In the late 90s, many people already had cameras, and a middle-class family could certainly afford to photograph their child from the first days. It was just that before I was 18 months old, I wasn't in this family. The guests started arriving in the afternoon. Aunt Clara, Mom's sister, Uncle Leo, and his wife, our neighbor Ms. Eloise. Everyone congratulated me, gave me gifts, and commented on how much I had grown and how lovely I was. At the table, they shared anecdotes, recalling funny incidents from my childhood. "Remember when Naomi ran away to the fountain in the park when she was 5 and didn't want to come back?" Aunt Clara laughed. "She was shouting that her real home was there." "Yes, she always had a stubborn streak," Mom agreed. "She would sometimes say the strangest things." I listened to these memories with special attention. So even as a child, I somehow sensed that something was wrong, that this house wasn't my real home. Children are often more intuitive than adults realize. By evening, the guests had left and it was just the three of us. Mom cleared the table and Dad watched the news. I helped with the dishes and waited, knowing that the serious conversation was imminent. Tension that hadn't been there before hung in the air. After cleaning up, we sat in the living room. Dad turned off the television and turned to me. His eyes showed determination mixed with pain. "Naomi, sit down. We need to talk seriously," he said. "About what?" I asked, although I knew the answer perfectly well. My parents exchanged glances. Mom wiped her hands on her apron even though they were dry. "You're an adult now and we feel we must tell you the truth," Dad began. We are not your biological parents. We adopted you from a group home when you were 1 year old." I feigned surprise, though the words weren't a revelation to me. "What? You mean I'm adopted?" "Yes," Mom said softly. "Your biological mother couldn't take care of you. She had problems with alcohol. Child Services removed you and placed you in a group home. And we wanted a child but couldn't have our own. So we adopted you. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I tried to put hurt and confusion into my voice. "We meant to tell you when you were older." Dad avoided eye contact. "But then we decided it was better not to traumatize you. You were a happy child. Why upset you? And what was my real mother's name?" "We don't remember anymore," Mom quickly replied. "It was so long ago. It's probably in the documents, but we don't keep those." Another lie. They kept the documents very carefully in that very box on the high shelf. "And what now?" I asked. The most unpleasant part of the conversation was coming. Dad cleared his throat and spoke, looking away completely. "You see, Naomi, you are an adult now. Our obligations for your upbringing are formally over." Which means you need to move out," Mom chimed in, a note of irritation creeping into her voice. "We can't support you your whole life. We barely have enough money as it is. Our Social Security payments are small. Our health is poor. We will of course help you for the first little while, Dad added. We'll rent you a room for a month or two until you find a job and get on your feet. I stayed silent, processing what I'd heard. So, they were really throwing me out as soon as their legal obligations ended. 18 years of raising me and now you're free. I understand, I said calmly. When do I need to move out? Well, within the week, Dad said uncertainly. Don't rush, but the sooner the better, so you can start getting used to independence. Mom suddenly stood up and began pacing nervously around the room. Don't think we don't love you, she exclaimed. We raised you for 17 years, fed you, clothed you. You were like our own child, but now you need to have your own life. Get married, have children. We are old now. We need peace and money is tight for two people, Dad added. Utility bills are rising. Groceries are getting more expensive. It's hard for us to make ends meet. Then Mom unexpectedly snapped. And honestly, stop sitting on our backs already. We fed you for 18 years and you never even said thank you properly. Is this how you repay us after being raised? You're ungrateful, Naomi. I thought you would at least appreciate our sacrifices. But you, Brenda, stop it. Dad interrupted her. I won't stop. Let her hear the truth. We didn't adopt her for the fun of it. We got money for it. And now that the payments have stopped, she can support herself. Does she think we'll keep supporting her out of pity? No way. Brenda, please. What? Brenda, I'm telling the truth. If she were grateful, that'd be one thing, but she's grown up. And even at 18, she's not working. She's clinging to us like a tick. So they got money for me. It turned out I was not a daughter to them, but a source of income, foster care subsidies, utility discounts, maybe some tax credits. And now that the money was gone, their parental love was gone too. I stood up from the sofa and looked at both of them calmly. All right, I said. I'll start packing tomorrow. Naomi, don't be angry, Dad began. We're not your enemies. It just worked out this way. I'm not angry, I replied truthfully. I understand everything. And I truly understood. Finally, everything made sense. Why were they never genuinely close to me? Why didn't they surround me with that unconditional love parents usually give their children? Why was there always a certain coldness, a distance? They fulfilled their obligations. They got paid for it, but there was no real love. Well, that's good that you understand. Mom breathed a sigh of relief. I thought you'd cause a scene. I smiled. If only they knew that I had been aware of their plans for 3 days, that I had mentally prepared for this conversation and had even begun searching for my real mother. Don't worry, I said. Everything will be fine. The rest of the evening passed in a strained atmosphere. My parents clearly felt awkward after the conversation, but also relieved that the hardest part was over. I, on the other hand, was just counting the hours until morning when I would start packing and planning my new life. Lying in bed that night, I thought about how everything would change. Tomorrow, I would begin gathering my few belongings. The day after, I would probably move into a rented room, and after that a job search, the search for my mother, building a new life from scratch. It was scary but at the same time exciting. I would finally live without lies, without the need to pretend to be a grateful daughter to people who treated me like a burden. I would find the truth about my origins and maybe even find my real family. As I fell asleep, I took one last look at my childhood room where I had spent 17 years of my life. Tomorrow a completely different story would begin. In the morning, I woke up with a clear plan of action. While the Jamesons ate breakfast and got ready for work, I made a list of what to take with me. I didn't have many possessions. Clothes, textbooks, a few sentimental items. Everything fit into 2 suitcases and a large bag. Are you serious? You're leaving today. Mom was surprised when she saw my packed bags. Why delay? I replied. You both said the sooner the better. Walter Jameson gave me the address of the room he had rented for 1 month. The neighborhood was rough, but what could I do? They either didn't have more money or they didn't want to spend it. He also handed me $200 for the first little while, as he put it. This should cover food for about 10 days, he said. After that, find a job. Stores need cashiers and cafes need servers. They don't require any special education. I nodded and took the money. $200 for 18 years of upbringing. I wondered how much the government had paid them for an adopted child. Certainly much more than that. Mom helped me carry the bags to the bus stop. On the way, she tried to justify herself. Don't think we're kicking you out because we're mean. Life is just like that. Everyone has to walk their own path. You'll live on your own. You'll see how hard it is to earn money and solve problems yourself. At least you'll become independent. I understand, I replied briefly. And stop by sometimes. We're not strangers. We lived together for 17 years after all. I promised, although I knew I would likely never see these people again. What kind of family is it if they get rid of me at the first opportunity? The room turned out to be in an old dorm that had been converted into shared living, small, about 12 feet by 12 feet, with a window overlooking a concrete courtyard. The furniture was ancient: an iron bed, a peeling wardrobe, a table and a chair, but it had a sink and an electric hot plate. The toilet and shower were shared on the floor. The first few days were spent setting up and looking for work. I walked around dozens of stores and cafes in the area. Everywhere required experience, which I didn't have. Some places wouldn't even talk to me, barely seeing my age. Finally, a small grocery store agreed to take me on a trial basis. The owner, a man in his 50s with tired eyes, explained the conditions. I would have to work hard 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. The salary was $1,900 a month. The first month was a trial period with half the pay. I agreed. $950 for a month of grueling labor was humiliatingly little. But I had no choice. The work was hard. Standing on my feet for 12 hours hauling boxes of goods, enduring the rudeness of customers. I especially had trouble with the neighborhood drunks who constantly demanded credit and insulted me when I refused. But the job had one advantage. It was close to the district administration and the Vital Records archive. On my lunch break, I would run there trying to find information about Serena Caldwell. At the Vital Records archive, they showed me the record of my birth. Officially, the mother was listed as Serena Caldwell. The father box was blank. The mother's address at the time of birth, the same North Parkway Avenue 23. You don't have any more information about her? I asked the archive employee. No, of course not. We only record the facts of birth. For the rest of the information, you need to contact other agencies. At the district administration, I was directed to the Child Services Department. An older woman, Ms. Gail Thompson, worked there. She listened carefully to my story. So, you're looking for your biological mother? She clarified. Are your adoptive parents aware of your search? Not exactly, I answered evasively. They think it's better for me not to know the details. I understand. Well, let's see what we have in the archives. Ms. Thompson went into the archive room and returned half an hour later with a thick folder. Here's your file. You can read it, but I cannot let you take the documents. I greedily jumped on the papers. There was a detailed history of my removal from the family. Neighbors had repeatedly complained about the sound of a crying baby, about the mother bringing home drunken men, and about the smell and unsanitary conditions in the apartment. When the commission came for an inspection, they found me alone in the apartment, dirty and hungry. My mother hadn't been home for 2 days. The refrigerator was empty and bottles were scattered throughout the apartment. I was immediately hospitalized and transferred to a group home. Serena Caldwell was found 3 days later. She was on a drunken binge at some acquaintance's place and didn't even remember leaving her child alone. In court, she didn't contest the termination of her parental rights. She only cried and kept repeating that she would fix everything. What happened to her after that? I asked Ms. Thompson. After the termination of parental rights, she lived at the same address for another year, then sold the apartment and left. Where? No one knows. We don't track the lives of parents whose rights have been terminated. Do you have the address of the person who bought the apartment? No. That's a private civil transaction. You would need to check with the county assessor's office. At the assessor's office, they asked for a $35 fee for the record. This was a lot of money for me, but I paid it. It turned out the apartment was bought by a woman named Sarah Jones, a resident of our city. Miss Jones's address was in a decent neighborhood. I went there on Sunday, my only day off. I found the house, went up to the right floor and rang the doorbell. A well-groomed woman about 45 years old, wearing a nice robe, opened the door. Are you Sarah Jones? Yes. And who are you? I'm looking for information about the previous owner of the apartment you bought on North Parkway Avenue, Serena Caldwell. The woman grew cautious. Why do you need that information? I'm her daughter. I'm trying to find my mother. Ms. Jones looked at me closely, then invited me inside. Come in, I'll tell you what I know. The apartment was beautiful and cozy. Sarah Jones led me into the living room and offered me tea. I remember Serena well, she began. She was an unhappy woman. When we bought the apartment, it was in terrible shape. She was drinking heavily, looked much older than her age. Did she say where she was going? She said New York City. She mentioned she had friends there who would help her start a new life. She was very regretful about what happened with her child. She cried when she talked about it. Did she give a more specific address in New York? No, only that she would be staying with a friend named Lisa. I don't remember anything else. Lisa in New York. That was at least a lead, albeit a very vague one. Can you remember anything else? Sarah Jones thought for a moment. Yes, I remember. She mentioned she used to work at a bakery. She said she might try to get the same kind of job in New York. Maybe that will help. A bakery. That was concrete information. There was only one large commercial bakery in our city, the Quality Loaf Bakery, and they definitely had archives of personnel records. The next day on my lunch break, I went to the bakery plant. In the Human Resources Department, I was received by an older man who had worked there since the 70s. Serena Caldwell, he repeated. Yes, I remember her. She worked in our production line. She was a good worker until she started drinking. Why did she quit? She didn't quit. She was fired. She started having unexcused absences. Then she came to work drunk. We were patient for a long time, but when the problems with her child started, we had to let her go. Do you have any contact information for her acquaintances? Unlikely. That was a long time ago, but you can talk to Miss Betty Taylor. She worked in the same department and was friends with Serena. She's retired now, but I have her address. Miss Taylor lived in the same neighborhood where I rented my room. An older woman with kind eyes. She immediately invited me into her home as soon as she realized who I was. Serena's daughter, she exclaimed, throwing up her hands. Well, I'll be. You look just like her. The same eyes, the same face shape. My heart beat faster. Finally, someone who knew my mother well. Please tell me about her, I asked. Miss Taylor talked for a long time. Serena was a kind, responsive person but very sensitive. When her man left her, she couldn't handle the loneliness and single motherhood. She started drinking to drown the pain. She was heartbroken when they took you away, Miss Taylor said. She cried every day, blaming herself. She said she wasn't worthy of being a mother. Did she tell you about moving to New York? Of course, I even took her to the bus station. She was moving in with a childhood friend, Lisa. They were close friends in high school. Then Lisa moved to New York and got married. Her last name was, what was it? Sov. No, Solowski. Lisa Solowski. Lisa Solowski. Finally, concrete information. You don't remember the exact address? No, of course not. But Serena said Lisa worked for a publishing company and lived in Harlem. I thanked Miss Taylor profusely. Now I had a real lead for my search. Lisa Solowski Publishing Company, Harlem, New York. That evening in my small room, I took out my notebook again and wrote down all the new information. The action plan was becoming clearer. I needed to find Lisa Solowski in New York and through her track down my mother. Finding Lisa Solowski in New York proved to be much more difficult than I had expected. There were hundreds of people with that name online. I checked social media profiles trying to find a woman of the right age who worked in publishing. After a week of searching, I found several possible candidates. One, Lisa Solowski, worked for Scholastic Publishing, another for the Random House Publishing Group, and a third listed book industry on her profile. I decided to be methodical, contacting each one and asking about a friend named Serena Caldwell. The first two women replied quickly but negatively. They didn't know anyone by that name. But the third, Lisa Solowski from a small independent publisher, didn't reply to my messages for several days. Then I decided on a desperate move. I saved up the money for a bus ticket to New York and went to look for her in person on a weekend. It had to be the overnight bus, the cheapest option, 8 hours in a cramped cabin. But I was ready for anything for a chance to meet the person who might know where my mother was. In New York, I first found the publishing office. The building was an old pre-war construction with high ceilings and squeaky floors. A young woman in her 20s was sitting at the reception desk. Lisa Solowski, she repeated. Yes, she works here, but today is Saturday. She's not working. What is this regarding? It's a personal matter. Very important. The receptionist hesitated, but then gave me Lisa Solowski's phone number. Just don't tell anyone I gave it to you. We are not supposed to give out employees' private contacts. I dialed the number right outside the publishing house entrance. The phone was answered after a long period of ringing. Hello. It was the tired voice of a middle-aged woman. Miss Solowski, my name is Naomi Caldwell. I am looking for my mother, Serena Caldwell. I was told she might have come to New York to stay with you. A long pause followed on the other end of the line. Serena Caldwell? Oh my God. And you? You are her daughter. My heart started pounding faster. I had found her. I had found the person who knew my mother. Yes, I am her daughter. I'm begging you. Could I meet with you? I came all the way from Memphis just for this. Of course. Of course. Come to my apartment, but I must warn you, this will be a hard conversation. Lisa Solowski lived in the Harlem neighborhood in a typical New York apartment building. The apartment was small but cozy with bookshelves reaching the ceiling. The hostess was a woman in her 40s with a short haircut and keen eyes. Sit down. I'll tell you everything I know, she said, settling me on the sofa. Just prepare yourself. It's a sad story. Lisa explained that she had known my mother since high school. Serena was her best friend. A kind, dreamy girl who wanted to be a teacher. After high school, they lost touch. Lisa went to college in New York. Serena stayed in Memphis. She found me 18 years later. Lisa continued. She arrived in terrible shape, run down, sick, depressed. She told me about the man who abandoned her when she was pregnant, about how she couldn't handle raising a child, about them taking her daughter away and what happened after. I took her in. She lived here for 6 months trying to get treatment for alcoholism, looking for work. At first it seemed like everything would work out. She stopped drinking, got a job cleaning at a firm, and even started to look better. Then Lisa sighed heavily. Then she had a relapse. She found information online that her daughter, that's you, had been adopted. She found out the adoptive parent's last name and even figured out the address somehow. I flinched. So my mother knew where I lived. She wanted to see you, Lisa continued. But she never had the courage to approach you. She kept saying she had no right to ruin your life, that you deserved to think of those other people as your parents. Did she ever come back to Memphis? Yes. A few times she would stand near your school watching you from a distance. Then she would come home and cry. She'd say you looked happy, that you had good parents, and that she had no right to interfere. Tears welled up in my eyes. My mother had been so close. She had seen me but never dared to approach. And where is she now? I asked with a trembling voice. Lisa paused, then quietly said, She's not alive, Naomi. Serena passed away 3 years ago. The world spun around me. I knew it was possible. I had prepared for this outcome. But the news still hit like lightning. How? I barely managed to whisper. Liver cirrhosis, the consequences of alcoholism. The last 2 years she was very sick, but she wouldn't go to the doctor. She said she deserved the sickness for losing her daughter. I cried, and Lisa silently handed me tissues. When my tears ran out, she continued the story. Before she died, she asked me to find you if anything happened to her. She gave me the documents. She'd held on to your birth certificate. The photos she managed to take when you were an infant. Photos. I repeated. Lisa went into the next room and brought back a small box. Here. She wanted you to have this. Inside the box were baby photos. Me in a blanket. Me in the arms of a young woman with my eyes. Me taking my first steps across a small room. On the back of every photo in my mother's handwriting were the words, My little Naomi. And the dates. There was also a letter in the box sealed in an envelope. Written on it were the words, To my daughter Naomi. With trembling hands I tore open the envelope. The letter was written in shaky handwriting, clearly during her illness. My darling daughter, if you are reading this letter, it means I am no longer here. I want you to know that not a single day passed without thoughts of you. I was a bad mother. I couldn't protect you and give you what you deserved. But I always loved you. You were the only light in my life. And losing you became my greatest punishment. I saw you grow into a beautiful and smart girl. Your adoptive parents gave you what I couldn't. Stability, education, a future. For that, I am grateful to them even if they never know it. Forgive me if you can. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I needed to write this. Live a happy life, my girl. You deserve all the best in this world. Your mother, who will always love you. Serena. I started crying again. My mother loved me, thought of me even as she was dying, and she thanked the Jamesons for giving me a home and an education. Serena really wanted you not to blame your adoptive parents, Lisa said. She understood that raising someone else's child is hard, and she was thankful to them for doing it. If only my mother knew the truth about how the Jamesons really treated me. If only she knew that they got paid for me and kicked me out as soon as the payments ended. Lisa, can I find out where she is buried? Of course, at Woodlawn Cemetery. I can take you there tomorrow if you like. I nodded. I needed to say goodbye to the mother I never had the chance to know while she was alive. That evening, Lisa let me stay the night at her apartment. We talked for a long time about my mother, and gradually the image of an unhappy woman who couldn't cope with her circumstances, but who loved her daughter until the end of her life took shape before me. Do you know anything about my father? I asked. Darius. Honey, do you think they'll admit that to you? They probably lied to themselves too, saying they did a good deed. Miss Taylor was right. What was the point of talking to people who had lied to me for 18 years? They wouldn't admit they raised me for money. They'd say they loved me as their own, that separating from me hurt their hearts, and that it was for the best for everyone. But one thought wouldn't leave me alone. What if they knew that my mother was looking for me? What if she had contacted them, asked for permission to see me, and they refused? The next day, I decided to do a small investigation. I went to the neighborhood where we used to live and talked to the neighbors, introducing myself as a student researching the history of adoptive families. Miss Eloise, our former neighbor, turned out to be very talkative. The Jamesons? Yes, I remember that family. Naomi lived with them, the adopted girl. They were quiet folks. Didn't mix much with anyone. Do you remember if anyone ever came to their place asking about the girl? Oh yes, I do remember. About 3 years ago, some woman came by, sickly-looking, thin. She stood by the entrance for a long time, then went up to the Jamesons' apartment, and then she came down crying. My heart started beating faster. Mom, she really did come to the Jamesons. What happened next? Nothing special. Brenda Jameson later complained to the neighbors that some crazy person had come by harassing them, and that they were right not to let her see the girl. Said it was for the best. Did the girl know about the visit? No, of course not. Naomi wasn't home then. She was at school, and when she came back, they didn't say a word to her. So the Jamesons knew that my mother was alive and looking for me. They knew, but they hid it from me. They didn't even give us the chance to see each other one last time. I asked a few more neighbors. The picture became clearer. Mom had visited the Jamesons several times. The first time they even let her inside. There was a long conversation. Then she left in tears. The second and third times they didn't let her pass the door. What do you think they talked about? I asked Ms. Eloise. Who knows? Brenda Jameson later said that the woman wanted to take the girl back, that she had changed her mind and was ready to raise her now. And they of course refused. Rightly so, I think. Why put a child through such distress? Take me back. So Mom didn't just want to see me. She was ready to become my mother again. And the Jamesons refused her without even informing me of what was happening. Now I understood why they had become colder in the last year before I became an adult. They often hinted that I would soon be grown up and would have to live on my own. They were afraid my mother would come back for me, and they were preparing to get rid of me at the first opportunity. That evening I sat in my small room thinking about what I had learned. It turned out the Jamesons not only hid the truth about my origins from me, but also deprived me of the opportunity to reunite with my real mother in the last years of her life. Because of their selfishness, I lost 3 years I could have spent with my mother. But what angered me the most was that they pretended to be acting in my best interest. Why distress the child? Better not to traumatize her. But in reality, they just didn't want to lose their source of income prematurely. I took out my phone and called the Jamesons' number. Brenda Jameson picked up. Naomi. How are you? Did you find a job? Brenda, I want to ask you a question. Did my biological mother come to see you 3 years ago? A silence fell on the other end of the line. Where did you get that idea? She finally asked suspiciously. It doesn't matter. Just tell me the truth. Did she come or not? Well, she came. Some unbalanced woman. We decided it was better not to upset you. What did she ask for? Another pause. She wanted to see you, but we decided it would be harmful to your mental health. You were in your senior year with finals coming up. And that's all. That's all. We explained to her that you have a family, and that she shouldn't traumatize you with memories of the past. A lie. The neighbor said the conversation was long, that Mom cried, and that it wasn't just about a visit. Brenda, did she ask to take me back? Another long pause, then a clipped answer. Maybe she did. But what difference does it make? You understand, don't you, that it would have been wrong? We raised you for 17 years, and then some drunk shows up and wants to take everything back. She died, I said quietly. My mother died 3 years ago, a few months after you denied her a final meeting with me. Brenda Jameson was silent. She was looking for me her whole life, I continued. She loved me and regretted losing me, and you robbed us of the last chance to see each other. Naomi, you don't understand, she began. I understand. I understand everything. Goodbye, Brenda. I hung up the phone and cried. I cried from anger, from hurt, from despair. My mother died without ever hugging me one last time. And the people I considered my parents for 17 years turned out to be selfish strangers who only thought about themselves. But tears didn't solve the problem. I had to decide what to do next. Leave everything as it was or fight for justice, and what exactly could justice even mean in a situation like this? The next few days I pondered how to proceed. On one hand, I just wanted to move far away and start a new life, forgetting the Jamesons forever. On the other hand, the injustice burned inside me. They took money for my upbringing for 17 years, deprived me of a final meeting with my mother, and then kicked me out the moment their obligations ended. The solution came unexpectedly. On Thursday evening, a middle-aged woman introduced herself as a local newspaper reporter came into the store. She was buying bread and started chatting with me about life. It must be hard for a young woman alone in the city, she asked sympathetically. Sometimes, I answered cautiously. And your parents don't help. I have a complicated family situation, I said. And then surprisingly I added, have you ever written articles about the problems with the foster care system? The woman, Dana Sterling, was intrigued. What are you interested in? Do you have a story? I hesitated but then decided to go for it. I briefly told her my story. How I learned I was adopted, how I found out my parents received money for me, how they kicked me out on my 18th birthday, and how I learned they had hidden my biological mother's attempts to meet me. The reporter listened with growing interest. This is a powerful story, she said. Could I take your contact information? I'd like to write an article about the issues in the child services system, if you don't mind. Of course. I gave her my phone number. Deep down, I knew this could change everything, but I didn't want to stay silent any longer. 2 days later, Dana Sterling appeared at the store again. I looked into your situation, she said. It turns out the Jamesons were receiving pretty serious payments. A monthly stipend, utility benefits, tax credits over 17 years. That adds up to a significant sum. Is it legal to kick an adopted child out on their 18th birthday? Technically, yes. Guardianship obligations officially end at 18, but morally it's quite cruel. Especially considering they hid information about your biological mother's attempts to make contact. Dana Sterling offered to meet on my day off and record my story in detail. I want to write a piece about how some people use the foster care system for profit, she explained. Your story can help other children avoid a similar fate. On Saturday, we met at a cafe downtown. Dana Sterling was an experienced journalist who knew how to ask the right questions. I told her everything in detail, from finding the documents to talking to the neighbors about my mother's visits. Are you ready for the possibility that the Jamesons might respond through the same newspaper? She asked. They will certainly try to justify themselves, saying they acted in your best interest. I'm ready, I replied. Let them explain why they hid from me that my mother wanted to meet me. And do you have documents to support your claims? I showed her copies of the papers from the closet box, the photos Lisa Solowski had given me, and the letter from my mother. Dana Sterling examined everything carefully. There is enough material here for a serious article, she concluded. But I must warn you, publication can have consequences. The Jamesons could sue you for defamation. But what if everything I said is true? Then it will be difficult for them to prove anything, especially if we find witnesses to your words. I gave her the contacts for Miss Taylor, the neighbors who remembered my mother's visits, and Lisa Solowski in New York. Dana Sterling promised to contact everyone and verify the information. The article was published a week later. It was titled Adopted Daughter or Source of Income, and took up a full page in the newspaper. Dana Sterling presented my story in detail, but tactfully, not naming names, but providing enough details that acquaintances could figure out who it was about. The article talked about how some families adopt children not out of a desire to help, but for financial gain, how they formally fulfill their duties, but fail to give the children real love and support, and how they discard those children as soon as they reach adulthood. Special attention was given to the fact that the Jamesons hid my biological mother's attempts to reconnect from me. The girl could have spent the last years of her life with her birth mother, Dana Sterling wrote. But her adoptive parents made the decision for her, depriving both women of the opportunity to reunite. The reaction was immediate. By Monday, friends who recognized my story in the article were calling me. Some were sympathetic, some condemned the Jamesons, and some said I was wrong to air my dirty laundry in public. On Tuesday, Brenda Jameson herself called. Her voice was angry and sharp. "Did you write that garbage about us in the paper?" she asked without greeting me. "I told the truth," I replied calmly. "What truth? We raised you for 17 years, fed you, clothed you, and now you've disgraced us all over the city. Brenda, you took money from me and hid from me that my mother wanted to see me. The money we got was peanuts. It wasn't even enough to cover your expenses. And your mother was a drunk who could only harm you. She was sick and dying and wanted to say goodbye to me. You ungrateful brat." Brenda Jameson screamed. "We did everything for you and you smear our name. You'll see what becomes of you without our support." She slammed the phone down, and I thought that this was probably the last conversation I would ever have with the woman I had called mom for 17 years. On Wednesday, a man in a business suit came into the store. It turned out he was a lawyer from the city administration. "Are you Naomi Caldwell?" he asked. "I read the article in the newspaper. I'd like to talk to you." The lawyer explained that the administration was interested in my story as part of an effort to oversee adoptive families. "If your claims are confirmed, we may raise the question of recovering some of the unlawfully received funds from the Jamesons," he said. "Of course, it won't be the full amount, but something can be recovered. What do I need to do for that?" "Gather evidence, witness statements, and documents confirming that they hid information from you about your biological mother's attempts to make contact." I agreed to cooperate. After all, this wasn't just about the money but about justice. Other children shouldn't have to go through the same thing. By the end of the week, a real uproar had started around the story. Letters came pouring into the newspaper from readers, some supporting me, some condemning me. People with similar stories emerged. One woman said her adoptive parents also kicked her out on her 18th birthday, taking all the gifts she had received over the years. The Jamesons tried to defend themselves through the same newspaper, giving an interview in which they claimed they loved me like their own daughter, and the decision for me to move was dictated by concern for my future. "We wanted Naomi to become independent," Brenda Jameson told the reporter. "And we didn't tell her about her biological mother, yes, but only to avoid traumatizing the girl." However, their version didn't look very convincing against the backdrop of the neighbors' testimonies and the documents detailing the payments they received. A month after the article was published, the city administration issued a decision for a partial recovery of funds. The Jamesons were ordered to return an amount equivalent to the stipend for the last 3 years, the period during which they knew about my mother's attempts to contact me, but concealed it. The amount wasn't huge, about $8,000, but it was serious money for me. Now I could rent a decent apartment, enroll in a distance learning college program, and start building a full life. But the main thing for me wasn't the money. The main thing was that justice had prevailed. The Jamesons were punished for their selfishness, And I proved to myself and others that you can fight against injustice and win. 1 year has passed since I found the documents in the closet. My life has changed beyond recognition. With the money recovered through the court, I rented a studio apartment in a decent neighborhood, enrolled in a distance learning program at a local university to study education, and got a job at a children's development center. Working with children turned out to be my calling. Perhaps it was because I had been through the loss of a parent myself, and understood how important it is to feel wanted and loved. Children were drawn to me, and their parents often thanked me for my patience and understanding. The center's director, Mrs. Thompson, knowing my story, offered me the opportunity to become the coordinator for a program assisting children from troubled families. You have what many counselors lack, she told me, an understanding of what a child feels when their familiar world collapses. I agreed. The work was emotionally difficult but important. I helped children who found themselves in situations similar to mine, helping them find stability and belief in the future. One of the most difficult cases was 15-year-old Deja, who was about to be moved to a new adoptive family after her previous guardians gave her up. The girl was withdrawn, aggressive, and distrustful of adults. They're all the same, she told me during one of our first sessions. They take kids for the money, and then they throw them out when they get tired of them. I told Deja my story, how I found out the truth about my origins, how I found and lost my real mother, and how I fought for justice against my adoptive parents. The girl listened intently, and gradually the ice of distrust began to melt. "Aren't you sorry you found out the truth?" she asked one day. "No," I answered honestly. "The truth is always better than a lie, even if it's painful. At least now I know who I really am." Deja eventually agreed to placement with the new family. She later told me that our conversations helped her believe that not all adults lie and betray. My story became known in other cities. Dana Sterling wrote a series of articles about the problems in the foster care system, and many publications reprinted them. Journalists, representatives of public organizations, and family law specialists began reaching out to me. One day, a woman from New York called, introducing herself as an activist from a child protection organization. "We'd like to invite you to speak at a conference on children's rights," she said. "Your story can help change the system for monitoring adoptive families." I agreed. The presentation took place in a large hall filled with social workers, lawyers, and representatives from child services from different regions. As I told my story, I saw understanding faces in the audience. After the speech, people approached me sharing similar cases from their own practice. "The problem is truly serious," an experienced social worker from Chicago told me. "Many families take children purely for the payments, and oversight is practically non-existent." At that same conference, I met Jamal, a lawyer who specialized in protecting the rights of foster children. He turned out to be not only a smart professional, but also an interesting person with a kind heart. "I want to help you search for your father," he offered after the conference. "I have contacts in various archives and databases." I hesitated for a long time. After everything I had been through, I didn't want to dive back into investigating the past, but curiosity won out. Jamal turned out to be very effective. Within a month, he found Darius Caldwell in Chicago. My father was working as an engineer at a large plant, was married, and had 2 children. "Do you want to meet him?" Jamal asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "Does he know about my existence?" "I doubt it. It seems he forgot about his romance with your mother a long time ago." I decided to write him a letter. I briefly told him about myself, what happened to my mother, and that I didn't want anything from him. I just wanted him to know about his daughter's existence. The reply came 2 weeks later. Darius Caldwell wrote that he remembered Serena, regretted what happened to her, but was not ready to communicate with me. He had a family and he didn't want to hurt them with stories from the past. "I wish you happiness," he wrote at the end of the letter. "But please don't write again." I wasn't disappointed. Honestly, I didn't expect a different answer. The main thing was that now I knew everything I wanted to know about him. The circle of my search was complete. Jamal and I started seeing each other. At first, we were just friends discussing work and common interests. Then the relationship became more intimate. He understood me like no one else, supporting me in all my endeavors. "You are strong," he would tell me. Not everyone could go through what you went through and remain such an open and kind person. A year after we met, Jamal proposed to me. We got married quietly without a grand ceremony, surrounded by close friends. Our witnesses were Dana Sterling and Miss Betty Taylor, who had become like a grandmother to me. At the wedding, I thought about my mother, about how happy she would be to see me so happy. Her letter said, "Live a happy life, my girl. You deserve all the best in this world." It seems her wish came true. I never saw the Jamesons again. I heard from acquaintances that they moved out of the city after all the fuss with the newspaper publications. They said Brenda Jameson was deeply affected by the public condemnation, and Walter Jameson became seriously ill. I didn't feel anger toward them but rather pity. They could have had a real daughter who would love them and care for them in their old age. But they chose money over love, profit over family, and were left alone with their conscience. Recently, Jamal and I submitted the paperwork for adoption. We want to take a child from foster care to give them what I lacked. A real family founded on love, not on calculation. Aren't you afraid of repeating other people's mistakes? Jamal asked me. On the contrary, I replied. I know exactly what not to do, and I know how important it is to tell children the truth. When I visit the group home, choosing my future son or daughter, I see in the children's eyes the same lost look I once felt myself. I want to hug all of them and say everything will be okay. Someone will come along who will love you for real. And at home sitting at my desk, I sometimes reread my mother's letter and look at our baby pictures. Now I understand that I had two mothers. One gave me life and loved me until her last day, even if she couldn't raise me. The other gave me a home and an education, but she didn't give me the most important thing, unconditional love. And both of them, each in their own way, made me the woman I became. Serena taught me to value love. Brenda taught me to be strong and independent. Both of those fates intertwined in my life, so that I could become someone who helps other children find their path to happiness. Sometimes I feel like my mother sees me from somewhere above, and is happy with the woman I've become. My girl grew up. I seem to hear her voice. My girl found her happiness, and I built that happiness myself with my own hands, having gone through pain, deceit and betrayal. But that is why it is so solid and real, because it was suffered for and earned. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to leave your comments and thoughts on the story. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel for faster releases of new and interesting stories. Bye everyone.